1 Kings, 17th chapter and the 12th verse. Living life on empty. Living life on empty. One of the things that have been asked of me in the past as to there being 10 children in your family, could you identify which one of the children that your mother favored? Having 10 siblings, 9 siblings, you made 10. Could you tell that your mother favored one of the other? And I thought about that for a moment, this being Mother's Day, and I thought I'd bring that back to you just a small moment. And I thought about that for a moment as to if I could pick one of the other 9 or myself as to whether I could see my mother paying favorite to. And after a few moments, I turned and I said, no, I can't. I could tell that my mother showed all of us the same. I could tell that my mother would show us 2 things. She would discipline us, and she did it in a way whereby she loved us, and after disciplining us, it wasn't long before she started to react like it never happened. And I wondered, how is it that you could do a Michael Jackson beat down on me and then turn around and be laughing and telling jokes and happy? I'm still on that. And in those days, Kathy, you cried for a long time. Kids don't cry long no more. Kids don't really get Michael Jackson beat down no more. But I wanted her to see that it hurt me. So, Brenda, what I would do is I'd get right in front of her and go, and I would do that for a long time. And then she started getting mad at me for doing that. But I could never see her treat any of us any different than the other in the loving part or the discipline part. But I have seen the difference in other families and other places, but I just could never see it in mine because she had that way of character about herself that made all of us feel like we were the only child she had. When she's talking to you and when she's giving to you, when she's providing to you, for you, it was like you were the only one that was there, even though there was 9 others that was going to get what you got. That's love. And so, and in looking at the 17th chapter of 1 King, it's dealing with, first of all, Elijah. That's the backstory. The backstory is that God had spoken to this man of God. And that there are historians that say that he just appeared. He just came out of nowhere, just appeared, and God started working with him. And God put his words in Elijah's mouth and told Elijah to go tell King Ahab, because the country at large had turned their backs on God. The country at large, from the high places, meaning those individuals who were priests and high priests, and those individuals who were in leaderships and kings, had turned their backs on God. That's a pretty scary place to be in life, when you turn your back on God. And it's one thing to turn your back on a friend. It's one thing to turn your back even on someone that you consider an enemy. But it's a whole different expression to turn your back on God, or to start living your life contrary to God's will and God's way. God began to tell Elijah, go tell King Ahab, there's not going to be rain nor dew until you speak it. Now think about that power that God was giving Elijah. It's not going to be any rain nor dew upon the earth until you speak it. And then what he started to do was, what God will do is he started to give Elijah ways of provision and let him know that I'm going to take care of you. And there at a brook in which he had let Elijah know about, there's going to be water there in the brook. And there's going to be an opportunity for you to eat 2 meals a day. A raven will bring you meat and bread. And being in that situation, Elijah had to learn how to trust God. Remember now, there was no rain falling. And no rain falling, what that meant that there was no agriculture being worked or raised. Which means it wasn't long before they start to run out of things like grain. It wasn't long before they start to run out of things like water. But God was providing for, this is the backstory of where we're going. God was providing for Elijah. What God was doing was teaching Elijah how to trust him. See, even the man, the woman of God has to go through a period where they have to show that they trust God. Not that God don't know them. God is teaching them how to trust God and how to know God is real and God, what God says is real through their actions as they're living their lives. So he was doing it for, not God, but he was doing it for Elijah. For Elijah's next move will be based on how well he moved there at the brook. And he had food brought to him in the morning by ravens, bread and meat. He had water there at the brook. He had food brought to him in the evening by the ravens, bread and meat. And this went on for days. And then God spoke to him again and told him that he was to move from the brook and go down to Zarephath, which is there at Zion. And there is going to be a widow woman. I've commanded a widow woman there to take care of you, to see after you, to provide for you. Here's what God did. He caused the brook to dry up. See, sometimes we get real shaken when things begin to change around us. Well, my old boss would say that when you change an individual's routine, they're going to come and you're going to hear about them. And you're going to hear from them. When you change someone's routine, people are stuck on what they always have done. They always like to do what they've always done because they've learned how to manipulate and go around different things, working at what they've already have done. Individuals spend a lot of time trying to figure out things. And once they get a pattern of figuring out, they don't want that to change. So what God did was God dried the brook up. And then God caused the raven to stop coming in the morning and then stop coming in the evening. Sometimes we look at running out or things not being enough or that God is not providing for us. Sometimes what God is doing in our lives is moving us from the brook, moving us from what's usual and putting us into a place of unusual. Moving us from a place of expecting the same to putting us in a place where things have changed. He left the brook, and there when he arrived there at Zion, there at the gate, it opens up. This is the backstory. That there was a widow woman there gathering sticks. He began to ask this widow woman there in verse 12 she began to reply to him about her situation. He asked her for a cup of water. She turned from the gate. A gate is a place of judgment. In the Old Testament, I want you to understand, there at the gate, that's where jury trials were held. There at the gate, that's where your punishment, if you had one coming, was ordered down to you. There at the gate was decisions being made for the town. There at the gate was a place of judgment. There at that gate, she was gathering, the Bible lifts up 2 sticks, whereby she was going to make herself a meal and her son. And then she had already decided within herself that they were going to eat and die. And she said, "As the Lord thy God liveth." Here's what I got, Elijah. "I have not a cake," he had asked her for after the water, "but I have just a little bit of meal, a handful in a barrel, and a little oil in a cruse. And behold, I am gathering these 2 sticks that I may go and dress it for me and my son. And the plan was that we may eat it and die." Wow. Living life on empty. Living life on empty. It's difficult for me to live in a city like Indianapolis and to preach a sermon like this, knowing what I know about survival. It's really difficult for me living in a city among people that don't run out, always have, always had, and supply their needs were always met. When I come from a different culture where it wasn't always there. And my mother and my father had 10 children. And we like to label them in groups of 2. 5, first 5, and second 5. The parents that the first 5 of us met wasn't the same parents that the second 5 met. The first 5 met parents that were young, just starting out, nothing in the cupboard, no means of getting things in the cupboard. The first 5 started out with 2 people getting married and not having rearing children experience. So the first 5 was like test 5. Test 5 meaning that all the things that a 23-year-old woman, when she had her first child, experienced, and a 22-year-old man that had their first child experienced, wasn't the same thing that the second 5 had to experience. The first 5 experienced looking in the cupboard, and nothing's in the cupboard. The first 5 had the opportunity of looking in the refrigerator and maybe some mayonnaise and maybe some backs of bread. If not backs of bread, just some biscuits that was cooked that was left. Take the mayonnaise. Somebody said, "I've done that before." Okay, I got you. Take the mayonnaise, put it on the bread. And then imagine that you're eating whatever kind of meat that you want to imagine. And the first 5 had the opportunity. It's difficult to preach a sermon like this, Reverend Green, to a group of individuals that haven't been where we've been. Had the opportunity, the first 3 of us, where our mother sit us down and we only got about 3 chickens. And we've been eating eggs for a few days. And she sit us down, Eric, and asked us the question as to, do you all want eggs? Or do you want chicken? We didn't understand that if we ate chicken, we wouldn't have any more eggs. So naturally, for what we said was, Velma, we said, we want chicken. Deliver us from the egg. Now we got 2 chickens, less eggs. Finally, the last chicken was gone. I can remember my mother taking myself and my sister Abigail and allowing us to go to a pond. We've always lived near water until we moved into a small city. We lived near water. And we were in 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. And she would allow us to go to a pond and fish. And there was no fish too small. I'm talking about the first 5. There was no fish too small. I can tell you that all 10 samples, if they don't now, they used to, love fish. Because God would open up the windows of heaven and pour us out blessings. How you going to do that? Where you going with this, Pastor? I'm going to get y'all there. There would be rain that would fall down overnight that would flood our little pond. And before Sister Booker, we would go to school in the morning, first 5. We would go to that little pond and get those fish that ran out from the flood of the pond, take them back home to Mama, and Mama would take care of those little fish. I can remember running out of syrup, and Mama said, we're not out of syrup. Just hold on a minute. Take sugar and pour it down in a skillet. Let the sugar go into a glaze. Pour a little water on top of the sugar. And now you talk about maple syrup, but well, we may not have been maple, but we had syrup. I'm talking about the first 5. We learned how to survive because our mother taught us survival. We learned how to get along because we were the only ones that we had to get along with. We lived in a pasture, and we couldn't see any other houses around us. I'm talking about living life on empty. But one of the things I can tell you that we did have, I may not have the proper clothes to wear all the time. And my shoes may have wore out before the school year did. Sometimes my pants, when they made the song back in the day, Patches, I'm depending on you, son. Y'all heard that? Patches, I thought they were talking about me. But I may not have had all those things that it took to make a child look good at school. But what I had at home was a mama that loved me enough to make me feel like I was just as good and had just as much as the individual that had a lot. Because I didn't know I didn't have. See, it's one thing to know that you don't have. It's a whole different thing else when your parent, your mom, make you feel like you got it, even though you don't have it. And so empty. Empty is more than just not having something in the cupboard. Empty is also as being spiritually empty, spiritually worthless. See, that particular part was not a part of our lives. My mother made us feel like we were somebody, even when the world thought that we were nobody. My mother made us feel like we were on top, even though the world considered or maybe looked at us as being on the bottom. See, the thing I want to understand is what the first thing that I can remember about going anywhere at all. I'm going somewhere. About anywhere at all. My first experience of going anywhere was church. A church that is called Strangers Home Missionary Baptist Church. There on the Vons Road out of Pickens, Mississippi. That was the first church I can remember being a part of. I can remember living, no houses were between us and that church. We lived in a little curve there. In that little curve there, I can remember my dad said he was teaching us how to swim. Him being in the water, I'm talking about the first 5. Him being in the water, our dog had a problem with our hog. And the dog started chasing the hog. And my dad started trying to break them up. As we were in the pond, near the pond, him teaching us how to swim. And I remember how excited my mom got because her little babies were out there so close and this activity is going on. I'm talking about a mom. I can remember one of the most passionate things I can remember as a little boy looking back up at my mom. My uncle left a tractor. This may be a 2-parter. There near our home. And he was getting ready to go out for a Saturday event. He took a water hose and placed it down into his tractor and siphoned gasoline out of the tractor. I'm standing there as a little boy, probably 4 years old or more. Not 5, but about 4. I'm watching him. He gets finished, puts his gas in his truck, and leaves. I goes back to the tractor. I want to see if I can get the gas to come out like he did. I did what he did, and I got what he got. I just had no place to put it. And it got all over me. Down my throat, around my face, all over my clothes. And I remember staggering into the house. And I remember my mom picking me up and crying. And she kept saying, my baby, what have you done? I was just bad. What have you done? And she washed me up, she bathed me up, she cleaned me up, and I never heard another word about it. That's what a mom will do. Yeah, right. She'll pick you up in your worst moments, clean you up from whatever it is that you got on you, whatever you've been in. No matter whether you've been in jail, no matter whether you've been mistreating people or been mistreated by people, pick you up and clean you up. And watch this. And you never hear nothing else about it. I'm talking about a mom. So she gave us a spiritual experience. Empty, because this is living life on empty. Empty, when you are spiritually worthless. I'm talking about that individual that hadn't introduced themselves or their children to God. A life that that's a destitute life that has no value or no truth in it. Empty. It's a purposeless and a blessingless life. Empty. Living life on empty. That's not the life that I lived. That's not the life that I know. But that is empty. And so what we're doing is we're looking at not the mom in this historical story, not Elijah in this historical story, but the little boy that was home in this historical story. Because this little boy that was at home got the opportunity to watch that meal go down. That little boy that was at home got the opportunity to hear his mom talk about, I'm running out of oil. This little boy that was at home got the opportunity to see how every day there was a decrease in what they had. This little boy that was at home had heard the story even before Elijah, that they were out, living their lives on empty. Not without love, just without resources. See, the thing I want to say, free me up from all those famous millionaire basketball players that always got the same story about how their lives were so bad before they made their millions playing basketball, or playing football, or playing baseball. That's the black story. They're not the only ones that didn't have. They're not the only ones that ran out. The general population of blacks in America ran out. The general population of blacks in America lived in apartments or lived in some low housing income. The general population of America can have that same story, empty. But watch this. But what we do have is love. And so that love is what has given us provision, empty. Here's what empty is. Empty is a place between human suffering and God's divine fulfillment. Empty. The empty is that place between human suffering and God's divine fulfillment. In order for us to get to where God is, we're going to go through something. There's not a person in this building that hasn't been through something. Some of us have been through not having. Some of us have been through having too much. Some of us have been through parents that didn't love us or didn't show love toward us. I'm talking about that place, watch this, that's between the human suffering and God's divine fulfillment. In order to get to where God is, you got to get through some stuff that's placed in front of you. You got to go through some things some opposition that may be in your life that causing you to miss out on what God has for you. There are those who have gone through the fact of that they didn't have this or they didn't have that, and they blame their mother, their father. But see, the thing was, understand, now they got abundance of things, and rather than live in the joy of the abundance, they live in the sadness of blame. Watch this. Empty. A place between human suffering and divine fulfillment. All you got to do is just wait. Watch this. Wait on God. Be of good courage. Wait, I say, on God.
What an incredible message from our man of God here at Mount Moriah Missionary Baptist Church. Now's the time where we can all participate by giving. You can use our PayPal link on our website, www.3mbc.org, or www.facebook.com/MMMBC. We look forward to seeing you here on the Mount. God bless.